Sarah sat at the kitchen table, the soft light of early morning spilling through the window and casting a warm glow across the room. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. The gentle hum of the refrigerator and the faint chirping of birds outside were the only sounds that accompanied her thoughts. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching the steam curl into the air, and let out a sigh she didn't realize she'd been holding. It had been weeks since she'd felt a true sense of peace. Her life, though comfortable, had settled into a quiet routine. Days blurred together. Breakfast, work, errands, and evenings spent reading or watching old movies. Sarah often wondered if she'd given up on dreams she once held. Dreams that had seemed so vibrant in her 20s, but had faded with time. Beneath her calm exterior, there was a subtle restlessness. She longed for connection beyond the familiar walls of her home, for moments that would stir her heart and remind her that life could still surprise her. But she kept these thoughts carefully tucked away, sharing them with no one, not even her daughter, Emma, who was busy with her own life and ambitions. As Sarah sipped her coffee, she heard a car engine in the driveway. It was unexpected. She frowned, setting her cup down with a soft clink. Visitors were rare at this hour, and her curiosity piqued immediately. Walking to the window, she looked outside. There, standing by the porch steps, was Jake, Emma's boyfriend. He waved nervously as he spotted her. There was something different about his expression today, something that made Sarah's chest tighten in a way she couldn't explain. He looked serious, almost hesitant, like he carried something important he needed to share. "Mrs. Thompson?" he called softly, his voice careful, respectful. Sarah took a deep breath and opened the door. "Jake, good morning. What brings you here so early?" Her voice was steady, but inside, her mind swirled with curiosity and a strange flutter of anticipation. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Jake began, shifting from foot to foot. "There's something I wanted to ask you. Something important." Sarah stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. The house felt warmer inside, yet the air between them carried a quiet tension. She could see his hands trembling slightly as he held his backpack, and she wondered why he seemed so vulnerable all of a sudden. They sat together in the living room. The morning sun fell across the soft beige carpet, highlighting the small dust motes dancing in the light. Sarah studied him quietly, noticing the faint crease of worry on his forehead, and the way he avoided her gaze for just a moment before meeting her eyes again. "I know this might sound strange," he said, finally looking up at her with earnestness, "but I need your guidance. Your advice on something important." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure why, but the gravity in his tone made her lean in slightly, as though drawn by the weight of his words. "Go on," she encouraged gently, her voice soft. Jake swallowed, gathering courage. "It's about my future, and my responsibilities. I don't want to trouble Emma, and I don't know where else to turn. I thought, maybe you could help me." Sarah felt a mixture of surprise and tenderness. He trusted her with something personal, something that mattered. There was a quiet strength in that, and it stirred a long-forgotten warmth inside her. She remembered the moments in her own life when she had been guided by someone's kindness, someone who had shown her the way without judgment. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not just Emma's boyfriend, but a young man navigating the uncertain path of adulthood, seeking wisdom and reassurance. And she realized, in that instant, that this simple act of asking for help could ripple into something meaningful. Not just for him, but for herself too. The room seemed to shrink around them, the morning light softening every edge, turning the ordinary living room into a quiet haven of possibility. Sarah's mind raced with thoughts and questions. How could she help without overstepping? Could she guide him while preserving her relationship with Emma? And yet, She felt a spark of hope, a whisper that maybe this unexpected visit was the moment she had been waiting for. Even if she didn't know it yet, Jake shifted in his seat, glancing out the window as though he feared breaking the delicate silence. I understand if you can't," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "I just thought it was worth asking." Sarah's chest tightened again. She wanted to reach out, to offer reassurance, to tell him that she understood more than he realized. And she knew in that quiet, fragile morning that whatever decision she made next could change more than just his path. It could awaken something in her own life, something she had long kept hidden. For the first time in a long while, the quiet house felt alive. The ordinary morning had become the beginning of a story neither of them could yet imagine. Asterisk as Sarah washed the dishes later that morning. Her mind drifted unexpectedly to a time long ago days when her life had felt lighter. And yet each small moment carried the weight of hope she hadn't fully understood. The water ran warm over her hands, the soft rhythm filling the quiet kitchen. And she found herself remembering a summer nearly 20 years ago. She had been in her early 20s then, a young woman with big dreams tucked in the corners of her mind. Her apartment had been small but cozy, with sunlight spilling over a bookshelf cluttered with worn novels and scattered journals. She would spend evenings writing letters she never sent, speaking her thoughts aloud to the empty room, imagining a world filled with possibilities. It was during one of those quiet evenings that she first noticed Daniel. He wasn't someone who demanded attention. He simply existed nearby, a soft presence in the corner of a cafe where they both often spent their afternoons. Sarah remembered the way he would smile politely when their eyes met, the way they shared fleeting conversations about books, music, or the changing seasons. There was a calm, unspoken understanding between them, a delicate thread of connection that grew slowly, naturally. Their interactions were gentle and small, yet they left impressions that lingered. Daniel would leave little notes on napkins, a quote from a poem, a line from a song. Sarah would find herself smiling quietly, holding the words close as if they were treasures meant only for her. In return, she shared laughter, stories, and the small, earnest gestures of kindness that had the power to make ordinary moments extraordinary. But life, as it often does, had other plans. The summer ended, and with it came a separation neither of them could have predicted. Daniel received an opportunity in another city, far from her little corner of the world. Promises to write letters faded with time, and the distance grew not just in miles, but in the lives they began to live apart from one another. Sarah remembered the quiet ache of that farewell, standing at the bus station with her heart full and yet unsure how to carry on. She had felt the sting of longing, but also a strange comfort in knowing that some connections, no matter how brief, leave permanent marks on the soul. Those months of shared smiles and quiet companionship had shaped her, teaching her to recognize the beauty in subtle moments, to appreciate sincerity and kindness above all else. Even years later, those memories would surface unexpectedly. A song on the radio, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the sight of sunlight spilling across a table, each little reminder carried her back to that chapter of her life, filling her with warmth and bittersweet nostalgia. She had grown and moved forward, yet those echoes remained, quietly influencing the way she noticed others, the way she approached life, and the way she understood trust. It was this ability to notice the gentle, honest gestures in people that had drawn her attention to Jake that morning. In him, she saw a hint of that same earnestness she had once admired in Daniel, the careful thought in his words, the vulnerability in his eyes, and the hope that something meaningful could emerge from simple, sincere actions. As Sarah dried her hands and looked out the window at the driveway, where Jake's car still sat, she realized that her past had quietly prepared her for this moment. The quiet afternoons with Daniel, The small exchanges and shared understanding had taught her patience, empathy, and the importance of listening, not just hearing words, but sensing the intentions behind them. Her heart swelled with a gentle longing, but it was not a longing for what had been lost. Rather, it was a readiness for what could be. Life had given her these lessons in soft, unassuming ways, shaping her into someone capable of offering guidance, warmth, and trust to another person who needed it. And though she had never expected to see Daniel again, she recognized the same quiet magic in the presence of someone who might carry a new story into her life. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to imagine possibilities. Conversations filled with meaning, laughter that lingered long after the words ended, and the satisfaction of helping someone grow without losing herself. The past was a gentle echo, yes, but it was also a guide, a reminder that small, heartfelt connections can shape the present in profound ways. She turned from the window with a soft smile, feeling a quiet certainty she hadn't expected that morning. Jake's visit, the seriousness in his voice, and the trust he had placed in her all felt part of a larger story, one that wove together past lessons, present opportunities, and the potential for something meaningful to grow. Asterisk, a soft drizzle had begun to fall outside, tapping gently against the windows as Sarah prepared a tray of tea in the living room. The aroma of chamomile filled the air, and she paused for a moment to appreciate the quiet rhythm of the house. It was the kind of afternoon that invited reflection, when the world seemed to slow just enough for memories to return. She hadn't expected him, Jake, but when the doorbell rang, a familiar flutter of anticipation washed over her. Sarah set the tray down and walked to the door, feeling the warmth of the teacup still in her hands. Jake stood there, holding an umbrella and wearing a tentative smile. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson," he said softly. There was a slight hesitation in his voice, as if he were measuring the space between them, unsure if he should step forward. "Hi, Jake," Sarah replied, her voice calm but carrying an unspoken curiosity. "Come in. You caught me just as I was making tea." He stepped inside, shaking off the umbrella, and for a moment, neither spoke. They shared a quiet glance across the room, an exchange that held a subtle, unspoken acknowledgement of the time that had passed and the trust he had placed in her. It was in that brief moment, before any words were said, that Sarah felt the gentle pull of familiarity and warmth. "Thank you for seeing me again," Jake said finally, breaking the silence. His words were simple, but there was a sincerity in them that made Sarah nod thoughtfully. "Of course," she replied. "I was glad to talk with you last time. You seemed thoughtful." Jake smiled faintly, and Sarah noticed how naturally the conversation flowed between them now, as if the brief pause of time had not diminished the comfort they had shared before. It wasn't a spark of attraction, but rather a quiet recognition of understanding, two people meeting where trust and kindness could grow. As they settled onto the sofa with their tea, Jake shared updates about his life, the scholarship he had been offered, the decisions he needed to make, and the uncertainties that weighed on him. Sarah listened attentively, nodding and offering encouragement, careful to focus on his words and the emotions behind them rather than the situations themselves. "You've handled a lot already," she said gently. "It's clear you're trying to do the right thing, even when it feels overwhelming." Jake looked down at his cup for a moment, then back at her with quiet gratitude. I appreciate that. Not many people really listen. Sometimes it feels like I'm carrying everything alone." Sarah reached out and touched the edge of the table lightly, a small gesture of reassurance. "You're not alone. And asking for guidance is not a weakness, it shows courage. You're willing to learn and grow, and that matters." For a brief moment, the rain outside became a soft, almost musical backdrop, and the room felt suspended in time. Sarah allowed herself to notice the little details. the way Jake's eyes softened when he spoke, the slight tilt of his head as he considered her words, and the quiet pauses that carried more meaning than the sentences themselves. It reminded her of other moments from her past, the gentle connections she had valued, the understanding that existed without the need for drama or exaggeration. "Mrs. Thompson," Jake began, his voice careful, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said last time, about taking things one step at a time and not rushing. It really helped me see things more clearly." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad. Sometimes clarity comes from someone willing to listen without judgment." They shared a quiet laugh over a minor story he told about navigating new responsibilities, and Sarah realized how natural it felt to be present with him. The conversation was calm, emotional, and real, a reminder that human connection didn't always need drama or spectacle to leave a lasting impression. As the rain tapered off and sunlight peeked through the clouds, Sarah felt a gentle sense of closure and new beginnings intertwining. There was no rush, no urgency, only the quiet power of understanding and the comfort of being seen. She could feel that whatever happened next, they had laid a foundation of trust and mutual respect, one that could carry both of them forward in meaningful ways. The sun was low in the sky, casting a gentle golden light across the living room as Sarah poured herself a cup of tea. She could still hear the faint patter of the morning rain on the roof, and for some reason it made the world feel quieter, softer, as if holding space for honesty and reflection. Jake had asked to come by once more, and Sarah had agreed without hesitation. There was an unspoken understanding that today might change something, not in a dramatic, world-altering way, but in the subtle, profound sense of hearts and minds aligning. He arrived carrying a folder of documents, evidence of the scholarship he'd been offered, and the plans he was trying to organize. But as soon as he stepped inside, Sarah noticed that his nervousness hadn't left. There was a weight in his expression that went beyond school or responsibilities. It was the weight of vulnerability, of someone quietly searching for guidance and reassurance. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, setting the folder on the table, "I wanted to thank you again for your time, your advice, and just for listening. It's made a bigger difference than I expected." Sarah smiled gently, taking her seat across from him. "I'm glad. Sometimes all it takes is a bit of conversation and reflection to see things clearly." He nodded, then hesitated, as if gathering courage to say something he hadn't voiced before. "There's another reason I came today," he admitted softly. "It's personal, and I wasn't sure how to say it, but I feel like I should be honest because you've been so open with me." Sarah leaned forward slightly, her attention focused entirely on him. "You can tell me anything, Jake. I'll listen." He took a deep breath. "I've realized that some choices aren't just about opportunity. They're about responsibility, integrity, and doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And I've been reflecting on what that means for me, for Emma, and for my own future. I wanted you to hear that directly from me, that I'm committed to making careful, thoughtful decisions." Sarah felt a swell of respect and warmth for him. Here was a young man, not seeking praise, not trying to impress, simply speaking the truth he had discovered through reflection. It was a rare and beautiful moment, one that reminded her of the quiet courage found in honesty. "I'm proud of you, Jake," she said softly. "It takes strength to step back, consider the bigger picture, and act with integrity. You've grown a lot since we first spoke." He looked up, meeting her gaze fully for the first time without hesitation. "Your guidance, it's helped me see that. And it's made me want to be better, not just for myself, but for everyone I care about. I wanted you to know that, truly." For a long moment they shared silence, a space filled with mutual understanding and respect. Sarah realized that the choices we make, the honesty we offer, and the care we show can create connections deeper than any fleeting emotion. It was the culmination of the trust and warmth they had cultivated over the past few weeks. Finally, Jake stood to leave, his folder tucked under his arm. "Thank you again," he said simply. "I feel ready now. Ready to move forward, confident in the path I've chosen." Sarah smiled, feeling a gentle peace settle in her chest. "You'll do well, Jake. Just remember to trust yourself as much as others trust you." He nodded, a small smile of gratitude crossing his face. "I will." As the door closed behind him, Sarah lingered in the quiet of the living room. The sunlight had shifted, illuminating the space in warm, soft hues. She felt a profound sense of closure mixed with possibility. The experience had reminded her of the quiet power of guidance, empathy, and sincere communication. It wasn't dramatic, flashy, or life-altering in a sudden way, but it was deeply meaningful. She thought back to the memories she had shared with Daniel so long ago, to the lessons of trust, subtle connection, and kindness. Those past moments had quietly shaped her capacity to understand and support someone else, to recognize sincerity and potential. And now, seeing Jake's thoughtful resolve, she realized that life's small echoes often return to guide us in the most unexpected ways. Sarah poured herself another cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the final light of day reflect across the quiet street. She felt a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to help, to witness growth, and to honor honesty. Her heart was full not with longing, but with peace, understanding, and the quiet hope that comes when meaningful connections are nurtured with care. Ending note. Life had a way of presenting moments that seemed ordinary but carried profound significance. Today had been one of them, a gentle turning point where truth was spoken. Choices were made and hearts felt the quiet joy of understanding. Sarah smiled to herself, knowing that this chapter had closed with grace and opened the door to new possibilities, all grounded in trust, respect, and emotional depth.